everybody. Just waiting for a few people to get on. We are just going to get a couple of people on here to join right now. So we're just going to hang tight for 1 minute, Kirsten, while people join.
Sure, no worries.
Well, I guess we can get, we have a few people on. As people join, let's jump right in and they'll be able to join the conversation. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm Jamie Weatherby. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement, working on career programming. If you joined our webinars in the past, you've seen me before. I'm thrilled to have you all on. And thank you so much, Kirsten, for being here with us. So I'm joined by Kirsten Dodson, class of 2010, and we're here to talk about international careers. So Kirsten, throughout her career since she left UNH, has done a lot of international travel for her career, is currently working for a company based in France. So that experience a little bit about what it's like to travel the globe for your career. All the positives, the nitty-gritty pieces of that, and all the things that are worth considering if you're looking for opportunities of that nature. So before we get started, I just want to mention that we do have a Q&A feature down below. So if you jump on, if you have any questions, please at any point feel free to interrupt us. I'll be monitoring that Q&A. So just type your question down below and I'll see it flash, and then I'll be able to jump right in and get your question answered by Kirsten, who has a great deal of experience in this area. So Kirsten, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jamie. No, it's, and thank you for the kind introduction. That was really nice. But yeah, do you want me to introduce myself?
Yeah, so let's hear a little bit about, if you could talk a little bit about your career path and your experience since you left UNH.
Sure.
And if you always knew that you wanted to be working internationally and looking for those opportunities, or did you just happen upon that?
Okay. So hello, everyone. My name, again, is Kirsten Dodson. I graduated UNH in 2010 when it was the WSB school, not the Paul school. And since I graduated with a degree in business administration with concentrations in accounting and finance. So when I left school, I went to Ernst & Young and was an auditor for about 3 years. I didn't study abroad while I was at UNH. That was something that I specifically tried to do because in accounting, the international standards aren't applicable in the US. So with trying to get the dual concentration and leave with 150 credit hours, it made it a little bit difficult for my schedule. So that was a conscious decision of mine to not study abroad. And so I went and left and went to EY right after school, finished my CPA exam and kind of hit the ground running with them. I did travel a little bit with them. I went to Mississippi a few times, went to Virginia, New Hampshire a lot, but also Ohio. And I was traveling a lot to Ohio, which is actually kind of funny because it was one of the decision points which made me leave UI. But I moved to a different company and joined them as the senior international accountant for LogMeIn. And in that role, I remotely oversaw the operations and the accounting for a few external accountants in Australia, as well as India and Japan. And about a year after I joined there, I actually was asked by the company to move to Australia. And I moved in September of 2016. Oh my goodness, it's been so long. Moved in September of 2014 to Australia, and was there for about 2 years. And during that time, we opened an office in India, a direct office in India, as well as I was still reporting and doing the Japanese accounting. And after that assignment was over, I came back to the United States. And I actually changed jobs again, and I changed to where I am currently. I changed jobs to a company called Sigfox, and I am now the U.S. controller for Sigfox, and the headquarters of that company is in Liège, France. So I work with the team and the accounting and finance teams there directly on a pretty regular daily basis. So that's basically kind of how I've got to where I am now in a very kind of short, succinct manner. Obviously, there were a lot of decision points along the way, but throughout my career, I didn't really think that I would end up here. I think if you asked me when I left college, was I going to be a U.S. controller? My answer would have been no. I was going to be an auditor for the rest of my life. And would I be working for a multinational company? I don't know that I would have had the answer to that either.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've been doing these webinars, and it's been great to hear. I think it's been one of the most refreshing things that our alums have heard from folks like you over and over, is that a lot of times you end up where you are by taking opportunities, not because you had this pristine roadmap that you followed,
Yeah.
where you had, step 1 to step 26 figured out.
Right.
You kind of took opportunities along the way. And I think for our students or our younger alums, some of the things that are tough about trying to plan their careers is feeling like they need to have it all figured out. And so it's great to hear that a lot of these things kind of came your way and you took opportunities rather than necessarily feeling like you had it planned, which I think is challenging and overwhelming for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think even now, when I'm interviewing people to work with me in my roles, I never ask, where do you expect to be in 5 years? Because that question is so variable for so many people, because there are new opportunities coming up every day. And, in my own experience, it hasn't been a clear record, and I wouldn't, doesn't matter if you're trying to guess, your perceptions, what matters to you changes.
No. Exactly. So it sounds like your first experience, you did a lot of travel nationally. So you stayed in the U.S.
Yep.
And then you hopped and had an opportunity to start with the international. So you've had kind of all three scenarios. So the national travel, then you went to international travel where you were working for a U.S.-based company and then headed overseas. Mm-hmm. And now you're almost the remote employee working here in the United States for an abroad-based company. Is that correct? So for the timeline, you've had almost each of the three possible scenarios.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so were you planning when you left UNH? I know the first job hopping around nationally is maybe different, but were you on a mission to try to travel and work internationally, or did you just find out that you really enjoyed that component of your career once you got into it?
You know what's funny is that I actually, when I started traveling for Ernst & Young, it looks like this super glamorous thing, and everyone wants to be on travel jobs where they can fly and eat out on the company and, have all of those expenditures, which, visit new cities, which certainly is very exciting. I ended up going to Cleveland, Ohio, in the winter. So basically getting stuck in snowstorms all the time. Yeah. And so you're basically looking at flight delays and all of that sort of stuff. So I was ready to leave EY because I basically said to myself, I don't want to be driving around with, a constantly packed suitcase, all of that sort of stuff. And that's really why I chose to leave. But when I chose to leave, I was seeking out international companies specifically, because I knew that with the globalization of the economies, it would be imperative to have some sort of international understanding from an accounting perspective, and the merging of IFRS, especially with accounting, the merging of IFRS and US GAAP, it would be a technical area that would be important, and where I would have some personal growth as well. So I kind of ended up at that company for those reasons. And then this opportunity came, and it was the best experience probably moving to Sydney that I would have had. But had you asked me right after I left EY, my answer probably would have been a little bit different than a year later.
Right. So it sounds, I mean, not all work travel opportunities are created equal, I would imagine. So living in Sydney for a period, how long were you living in Sydney for?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. So yeah, so that's a totally different experience than having your suitcase and hopping around the country for,
Right.
you know, 2 to 3 day business trips. So I think if someone's looking for an international opportunity or even just a travel opportunity nationally, those are things worth considering. You know, if you hop over for a couple of days, you're usually there just for a work experience. But if you're living there, you get to embrace the culture and you get to have an entirely different like lifestyle change.
Right. I would also say it's also about mindset though, right? I was going over with EY, we were on auto clients. And so we were working probably 60 to 70 hours a week while we were there. And so we weren't we weren't going out to dinner. We weren't like actually experiencing the place that we were at. And so when I was like not working, my mindset wasn't in the place where I wanted to, you know, go out and see the city or, you know, take advantage of that opportunity as much. I kind of just wanted to sleep. And so, so I think mindset is super important because travel can be really fun. You know, we have a lot of people here who we have offices around the US. And so people actually travel quite frequently and then will make that business travel personal travel as well. They'll stay over the weekend, you know, go to different cities and fly back. And as long as the flight cost is the same or comparable, we don't care.
Right.
Personally, yeah.
No, that's great. So in our conversations, preparing for our conversation today, you mentioned a lot that you would probably, at this point in your career, never want to take another opportunity with a company that was just US based, because you love the complexity and the opportunities that come with a global company. Yeah. So with that being the case, what has been your favorite part about working for a global company, but also having that travel experience? Like, what is it about that that's so fulfilling for you?
So I would say, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Culture is a double-edged sword. And like, there are definitely things when I moved to Australia and I started working and I was working remotely with our Indian employees, and, you know, you would start butting heads because of, you know, the different times people take off, you know, what different people value, how different people work. And in the US, I think that there's a very work-centered mindset a lot of the times, and it's, you know, go 100%, and then never take breaks. And then once I moved abroad, you start to really appreciate other people's cultures a lot more. You really start getting entrenched in how other people live, and it's amazing and awesome. And I would like that cultural exposure is something I would never want to give up at this point. But also, you know, working for a US only, you know, company, you don't deal with international taxes, you don't deal with international visas, you don't deal with like all of that additional layer, which makes kind of what I do every day exciting and challenging. And we're constantly having different issues and problems to solve, which I'm sure exists in US based companies as well, but it's just another layer.
No, absolutely. That makes sense. And I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions about the taxes and some of the logistics, because I think that, so I'll definitely dive into that more too, if that interests anyone that's on the call right now, because those things are definitely, you know, it seems really great to be able to have those international opportunities, but there's so many logistical hurdles to that. So I'll ask you a lot more about that. But we actually have a couple of questions from online. So one of the questions to follow up what your favorite part is what has been the most challenging part about moving to a new country for your job?
So because a lot of companies are actually, I think we're blessed because a lot of companies are headquartered in the US. So all of the decision makers are in the US. The second you move abroad to a subsidiary of one of those companies, you become separated by, you know, a degree and an ocean and a time zone from those decision makers. So that you have to advocate, and I'm going to just call it the subsidiary effect, but essentially you have to advocate so much harder and use data so much more to rationalize your decisions than someone who's sitting right next to the CFO or the chief marketing officer or someone, and they can actively make those decisions real time. You know, you're separated, you have to have that communication via email or phone, and you have to work so much harder for it. So that's definitely the most challenging. And even working in the US for a French company, it's still the same. You're still trying to fight those battles of trying to get decisions made, and it taking 4 times as long because getting people to understand where you're coming from.
No, actually, that's really interesting. So we had another question for online. Before I jump into that, I want to piggyback. So I think that that's the challenge for remote employees in general. And I think that our work culture is moving much more towards having work from home opportunities, remote staff opportunities. The more technology advances, the easier it is to get high quality talent that you don't have to be logistically stuck within a region, so you can pull from people across the country or internationally in some cases.
Yeah.
But I think that there's, no matter how great technology is, there's a lot of logistical hurdles into being a good coworker or being a good partner, I think, at a distance. How have you been able to, like you said, that the challenging with the time zone factors and being that far, how have you been able to feel like I want to say a good partner and team member when you're working so far away from the people that you're trying to connect with? Like, how have you bridged that gap personally, or what habits have you created to bridge that gap?
So it was really difficult at first because I think we didn't have a lot of remote employees. Everyone else that I was working with was all, you know, very centralized in the same area. So it kind of put me out on an island. And so I had to adapt very quickly to try and understand what I was supposed to do. I know people don't like meetings for the sake of meetings, but I would schedule regular meetings with some people that I needed to liaise with, just to make sure, like, just as check-in points, that they were clued into what I was doing and I was clued into what they were doing, even if it's just FaceTime, because I think a caution with remote work is if people don't hear from you, they start to assume you're not doing anything, which is and you might be you know, working harder than anyone at the actual office. But if, like, we even see this with our French team, we have a group workplace account. So our company, you know, to keep everyone informed of everything that's going on, posts on Workplace, which is just like a subsidiary of Facebook, essentially, for corporations. And if there's not activity on there, our CEO is monitoring it. And if there's not activity, he's, you know, questioning, oh, is there no business development? You know, what's happening? Are you not doing like team events? And you're like, oh no, well, we are, but it's just, you know, seen and not heard kind of thing. So
yeah. So it sounds like to be successful in a lot of ways, you almost want to build in habits where, whether you're working really hard, you want to make sure you're communicating all those things, you're getting in front of those people, and you're doing those things deliberately so that you feel like you're part of your team, and you have to self-advocate. You have to elevate your own work because somebody else might not be seeing it because you're at a distance.
Right. And you have to almost over-communicate what you're doing, and, you know, different channels and different people, because you don't know how that communication is coming across the organization once it gets there. So you may have told one person, but they may not have told, you know, the other 3 people that you'd be working with.
3 people. Right. So this is a personal question, but especially going at a distance like that, I know workplace culture is a great place to connect with people and feel like you see people all day long. Is it lonely to work at a distance like that, where you, especially if you move to a new part of the country where you don't know anybody as a remote person, or a different country altogether with it not knowing anybody? Like, how was that for you personally?
So it was really, I think it was a huge growth opportunity for me to move somewhere where I knew absolutely no one, because I basically had to figure out ways to meet new people. And the last time you do that is like grade school, or if you moved away for school or like college, you may have had to do that as well, but you had people in your dorm room and things like that. So I was a little bit fortunate that when I moved to Australia, I wasn't the only person in Australia. There was already a small sales office of about 10 people. So I was just the only finance representative there. So I was kind of, from a team perspective, my team wasn't there, but I at least had people to work with. So I think that was a huge plus. But finding friends outside of that, oh man, I forced my friendship onto people all over the place.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I played lacrosse in high school, and I joined the Sydney lacrosse club. And I was like, okay.
Funny, that's great.
So, but like, those are people that I still talk to today. So like, I wasn't the best player. I certainly don't know how much I contributed to the overall team, but it created at least connections for me while I was there to make me feel like I was more part of a community rather than, just existing in that place and kind of doing my job and feeling very displaced and homesick.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice, though. You almost have to try to find those groups or ways to deliberately embed yourself in the culture once you get there, or else, yeah, I would imagine that you could run in your circle and stay very isolated. So it sounds like you really went outside of your comfort zone in a lot of ways to make those friendships and bridge that gap.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that there's always times when there's going to be downtime and you're going to feel very alone, because if you were home, you could have spoken with, I was in a situation where I was so far off from a time zone perspective that people were asleep when I was awake. And so like on my Friday, like a Friday night, if I didn't have plans, I couldn't just call up, someone who was a friend and connect with them or feel engaged. So I think there are going to be those times, regardless of if you move locally, like domestically, or if you move internationally, that you will feel alone. But it's like in those times where you kind of have to step outside your comfort zone and say, okay, I'm going to go eat by myself at the restaurant. And because I think I did that, I felt comfortable traveling alone. I had to travel alone to India, which was a cultural experience, but I also decided just to travel by myself to Japan. No one wanted to go with me, and I said, I think I'll just go by myself. And I felt more comfortable doing that because I had to do other experiences in Australia.
Yeah, that is a great growing opportunity, though, to have that self-reliance and feel comfortable just doing things on your own. I think that unless a lot of times that feels really awkward unless you're forced into doing it because of the circumstance you're in a lot of times. And I think that comes with repetitions, where the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. So it sounds like that's going to be a skill that you get to take forever with you, that, now no matter what happens, you can, have that self-reliance and build a network.
Right.
But so we have another question from online. So the question is, you mentioned the other work cultures that you've encountered outside the U.S. Which do you feel was the best adjusted? The best adjusted to
like our culture, or was the most difficult?
My interpretation of the question, I guess, I think you could take that either way, but if they say best adjusted, my thought would be in terms of their culture around work. So other cultures compared to the U.S., we have a work mentality, would be my guess, is what she means. The best adjusted work-life balance. There we go. She followed up. So, so the difference between, having time off, or I think we talked about in our conversations, the maternity leave differences and stuff. So I think it would be whether a country just had a better work-life balance than, the U.S., which doesn't always have the best mindset around that, I'd argue.
So I'll comment on the cultures that I'm familiar with. So I know Japanese Indian, Australian, French, American, and a little bit of the UK, as well as Ireland. I would like, from a personal perspective, it took a long time to understand, but I do appreciate the French culture as far as work and life goes. The people I work with over there absolutely work, very hard. They come in late, which bothered me at first, but they, but then they end up working late. And so their production and their productivity is pretty much aligned kind of with what you see in the US. But it's mandatory in France to have 7 weeks of paid time off. And if you don't have
7 weeks.
Yeah. And basically,
that's amazing.
Their work week is only a 35-hour work week. And so basically they have required time off, and they're required to take 2 weeks between, the French government requires you to take 2 weeks between like June and September or something in a row of like consecutive time off, which is something that's completely unheard of in the US. Well, not unheard of, but for the most part, it's a foreign concept. And so they completely remove themselves, have these vacations, and people find ways to get things done in their absence. And so it creates the need for people around them to have the support network needed to still function as an organization, work collaboratively, but also take the time you need.
No, I would argue it is a foreign concept to us. Not that people can't take 2 week vacations, but I don't think that's encouraged, and it's certainly not from a culture or government perspective something that is standard practice. I think that if someone takes a 2 week vacation in our culture, that's a really long vacation. Most people don't take 14 days off. They'll take, a week maybe, or a week and a half, but then they'll come in for that Thursday, Friday, just to make sure that they make an appearance, kind of a thing.
Or even when they're taking time off, people feel like it's required to be on your phone and answering emails and bring your laptop on vacation. And I think, other cultures don't see it the same way. So if you're trying to work with another culture alternatively, and they're not answering your emails, like, you have to find a different way to get
be aware of that
done, and be aware that that's okay for them. And if you're working with them, do you plan ahead? What needs to be done? Like, it just takes more coordination.
Yeah. So from your experience, do you think that shift in mindset led to either more or less productivity, more or less burnout? So I would imagine that taking that time, how did you see that impacting the success of companies and somebody managing their workload?
I think it's appreciated by employees. So understanding that it's okay to take time off, and that we will get the work done, and here is my backup plan, and having an established backup plan is having that type of culture forces that almost. Whereas in the US culture, I didn't have a backup plan for myself a lot of the time. So if, I wasn't there, payroll wasn't going to get processed, and then employees weren't going to get paid. So I always needed to be on the clock. Even when I was in Australia, I was, okay, I need to be up for my, 2 a.m. meeting, and people are just like, the scheduling of meetings and all of that sort of stuff. And I just felt like I needed to be part of that. And I think the change in mentality will be very hard to reverse should I choose to leave Sigfox at some point in time. Go to a more Americanized company.
No, absolutely. That's really funny. That's true, right? Because you're jumping in and out of culture changes, and that's something that you'll have to be mindful of. So it's interesting. I hadn't thought of that like that. But
yeah, I don't think we get like 4 weeks of vacation because we're an American company, but they're not going to give us the 7 weeks like the French. But I don't think I'd ever be able to not have 4 weeks of vacation or have that flexibility. Or it's weird.
Well, it's interesting because I would also argue that the way the workforce has changed, the millennial generation and younger don't stay at companies nearly as long. So I think one of the biggest productivity killers or resource killers for companies is turnover and staff turnover. And I think one of the challenges with that is as soon as someone leaves, their job stops because, like you said, if someone's not filing payroll, you don't have a backup plan. I would wonder if with that kind of a strategy, because you disperse responsibilities or you have a backup plan for people to do your job, I wonder if those companies actually would lose less productivity if a staff member decided to leave for another opportunity. So it seems like there's a better support network to keep things running, not die hard holding on to one person being able to do that job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's interesting.
I think that I've definitely seen the adaptation of our US team in that way to try to make sure that we have those accommodations for ourselves. And I have had people leave, and it's obviously not fun in any way. But I also want to comment that through my experience in looking at other companies and other opportunities that people have had outside of my experiences, there are a lot more opportunities for people looking at the workforce and even in less experienced roles, so that there's more opportunity for rotational programs. I've seen a lot of AP rotational programs where people are working in the US and then working in Ireland and then, Australia, and providing that opportunity. And it just creates a longer retention period for some of the millennials, because they get to experience different cultures.
That makes sense.
From a promotional standpoint and a career progression, it's a little bit different because you are doing the same job for a longer period of time, but you're allowed to get the exposure to different cultures. So you're you're not necessarily, your career track isn't increasing as fast, but you do get a personal benefit out of it. So I think companies are looking to those type of programs as well.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So with that, I would love to jump into some of the more logistical things that I think that people wonder. It's, it seems great to work internationally, but then as soon as life gets a little bit more complex and then you wonder about taxes and things like that, it's like, how do you actually pull that off? So you've done a lot of traveling, but I do know that you recently, congratulations, you got married over the summer.
Thank you.
So, which is awesome, but also comes with its own element of complication, right? When it comes to your career and your husband's career and how you navigate if one of you got a new opportunity and that's something that's important to you, that international component. So has having, a partner, and I know you own a home, things like that, has that changed your perspective on your next career move, or maybe your husband's next career move, on what you would be willing to seek out or do or take?
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I do have a little bit to say about it, because I jumped at the opportunity to move to Australia. It wasn't even that's so far from home, I'm going to be disconnected. This is a great opportunity. It's a no-brainer. I don't have real ties. I didn't own a home. I didn't have a significant other that, I had to make considerations for, I guess. So I just got up and moved, packed a few boxes and left. I think that's obviously very different from where I am now. But I also want to say that opportunity was presented to me because my boss at the time chose and made the decision that he didn't want to move. So my boss was offered the opportunity essentially before me. And for him, he owned a home and he wasn't ready to make that change in his personal life. So the opportunity was offered to me. So that obviously does happen based on different people's priorities. But now that I, am more settled down, my husband and I have actually had the conversation of if a job for him comes up, or he's been asked to relocate to a different country or a different part of the United States, what would we do? And the answer for us is basically, if it's a good opportunity for you, like, we will make it work. So
right.
It's definitely going to be based off of the opportunity. We look at, the towns and the cities, and weigh that against, the other qualifications, but it's certainly more of a decision process for us. Now that there are more things in play, and we do have to consider one another as part of that decision, as well as, would we have to sell our home? Would we have to, or would we have to rent it? Would we have to remove the furniture? Like, all of that becomes a consideration once there is, I guess, once you move into that stage of your life. If you're not really ready and willing to just drop everything, sell everything, and move, what are the decision points at that point? So we have talked about it, but an opportunity hasn't presented itself where we need to actually address it. So right now.
Right. And obviously the opportunity would depend on what the questions are, and you can't really pre-plan for something you don't know, but
right.
Knowing that, that you both would still be open to it. But so when we were talking about this a little bit, you had mentioned that if you have an opportunity, things that you can, that's when you negotiate with your company, right? So you say, okay, I would love this opportunity, but there are some logistics that come with that. I own a home, and your company maybe would be a part of helping you sell that home. Or I have a partner, I need them to be able to come with me. So can you talk through a little bit of the things that you should be either advocating for, or things that are reasonable to ask your company for support if they're looking to have you go abroad for an opportunity?
Sure. So I think a key piece of it, when I left for Australia, I only was leasing an apartment. So my only consideration at that point was, will I be able to get out of my lease? And I just happened to be, like, the term of the assignment was going to be September 1. And if you're in Boston, September 1 is the date when everyone moves into the schools. It's the standard leasing date. And so that was not an issue. But there are definitely things to consider, because looking back in hindsight, it's always clearer. And taxes are a major consideration that I think anyone who is looking to live or work abroad should be cognizant of, because taxes in different countries are vastly different. And if you're not equalized from a tax perspective, you could risk paying taxes twice. If your company is not preparing your tax returns for you, if you're living and working abroad, or even traveling abroad for, I think it's over 120 days a year, in that there are tax implications to that, and you should be advocating with your company to make sure that they are preparing your tax returns, to make sure, the IRS and getting audited by the IRS is not a joke. And it becomes very complex when you're dealing with two different countries, two different tax systems, making sure that you're paying the right amount of tax into each jurisdiction, even if you're not in the US, one day during the year, you still have to pay taxes in the US based off of if you have a bank account in the US, if you have, any interest in stock or anything like that. So it's not just, are you physically there? It's what assets do you have there? What, do you have dependents or anything like that that are still residing in the US that could be an implication? So that's definitely the number one thing for me. But I think it's also, when you're looking at moving or relocating from a negotiation standpoint, your spouse or your significant other, if you're looking to travel, it's okay to ask for assistance with their move or with a salary almost for them. I have friends who have moved abroad and their job can't translate. And so they basically said, you know, if I'm moving abroad, I'm going to need you to cover the income for the two of us, because if she can't find other work, we still need to be able to survive as a family and get along. And that's something that's totally reasonable to ask for, because I think when you're eager to travel, it's hard to see how you're in a good negotiation standpoint. But if a company is asking you to travel, they're looking essentially for you to satisfy a need for them because you are the right fit. They can trust you. You've basically demonstrated that like your competence and an ability to do the job better than someone that they'd be able to find locally. So they're going to send you there for that specific reason. So it is in their best interest to try and figure out the ways to get you there. Certainly everything you ask for may not be, they might not say yes to everything, right? It's still a
well, that's the nature of any negotiation, right?
Right. It's still a company. It's still a business. And if the costs are starting to outweigh, you know, if they're starting to realize that maybe this isn't the best situation for the both of you, given what you need and what they need, then obviously it might not work out. But just understanding that it's okay to ask for a relocation package and for them to travel and buy furniture. I will note that if you ship furniture, it's tax-free and it's not included, like you're not taxed on that from a fringe benefits perspective. But if your employer pays for furniture, like to buy you furniture in your new location, that is a taxable fringe benefit to you.
Interesting. I would not have thought of that. So that's,
yeah, you start
so
to
it seems like almost, yeah, so interesting.
I mean,
we actually had oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we actually had a great question from someone online who wanted to say, specifically in your field, and I'm sure that this would apply to depending on your field, did you have to learn new laws, get new certifications in order to work in a new country?
I had to understand IFRS with accounting. So I did, webinars on that. It wasn't a specific requirement because when I went abroad, we were still reporting in US GAAP. So ultimately, all of the financials that were reporting up on a consolidated basis and that we were reporting on monthly were all still in US reporting. It was just the annual statutory financial statements for each local jurisdiction that I had to make sure I knew, and I was like corresponding with local accountants so that we made sure that the local books were in line with all of the local regulations, whether that be Indian GAAP or IFRS. So I didn't know everything, but I knew how to get what I needed, and that was good enough. I think it definitely depends on the role you're going into. Like right now, for my role currently, I technically work for a French company. So I had to learn French GAAP really fast, and it's pretty different than US GAAP, and it starts to really get you because it doesn't seem like real accounting. But it's, you have to start tracking, learn how to adapt and track locally as well as, as internationally, to say, okay, like this is how I think of things, and this is how I'm going to create all my reporting. Here is, a bridge schedule of everything and what I believe to be the consolidating entries. But I think asking for help and making sure, if there are courses required for you to be abroad, even if it's foreign language courses, I think asking for an employer to sponsor that, or even for children. We have employees who are coming over to the U.S. from France, and their kids don't speak English, and so like part of the relocation package is going into an international school, and tuition for an international school, but also like English learning classes for the spouse and the children, to make sure that the adaptation to the culture is not, terrible for the whole family.
Yeah, so actually that's an interesting question. So how does, if in either direction, do you know how healthcare, and it might vary based on the country, but how does healthcare work? So if you have coverage as if you're from a different country coming here, or you're from here going there, like especially if you're bringing kids and stuff, that could be a really big concern.
I think it definitely depends on your employment contract. So you want to pay attention to if your employment contract is a U.S. contract, like localized in a different subsidiary, or is your employment contract a local contract under all local laws? So when I moved, I was under a U.S. contract with under a local jurisdiction. So I still had my U.S. healthcare plan. So basically when I went to the doctor, it would just be an out-of-network probably provider if I were to go in Australia. But there are most contracts these days, I believe, are basically just you sign a new contract, and that contract is with the local subsidiary. And so all of your healthcare, all of that sort of stuff, it's all under the local laws. So healthcare, people talk about healthcare reform in the U.S. a lot, and we do have an expensive healthcare system compared to other countries. But talking to other countries, there's pros and cons to that, because the waiting lists for different procedures, based on what's going on with your health needs, can be pretty complex. So I think it's just, if you are thinking about traveling abroad or working abroad for any specific period of time, looking into what that country does in the terms of healthcare, to understand what the implications would be for you personally. If you have what's funny is my friend lives in England, and she had her first child in England, and she basically has said, I won't have any of my children in the US because all of her health care and maternity, they have 6 months maternity leave. The entire procedure and birth was, at the hospital was paid for. And in the US, you kind of get 2 days, get kicked out, and that's that. And then you have 3 months or 3 months maybe of maternity leave, and then you're back at work. And so she's just basically nope, we're gonna have all our kids here, and then we'll just move back to the US. And so I think that's probably an unexpected consequence of her living abroad, but one that she realized was important for her once it kind of happened.
Yeah, I don't know if you know the answer to this, so it's okay, totally fine if you don't, but how does that work for citizenship? So if you have a child abroad while you're, working abroad, but you're a U.S. citizen, how would that, do you know the answer to that, if they're...
I don't know 100% the answer to that. I assume that if you're not on a local contract and so if you're on a US based contract and you're not a permanent resident, that your kid probably doesn't have citizenship. But I can't comment on that completely. I'd have to look for you.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, I would imagine that's, I guess, if you're looking to have, or it's the possibility of having a child while you're abroad is there. I think that's probably, something worth looking into, because you want to make sure you have citizenship in the same country as your child. So, when it comes to, that's complicated.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know if the kid, I can't comment on it. So I can look into it for you though and let you know if you do want to kind of let everyone on the webinar, make everyone aware, but
yeah, sure.
I can take note of that.
So what do you think? So with all of this, there's a lot of factors that obviously go into being successful when you're working abroad, being a good employee and team member, and how you navigate that, and then the personal components. Mm-hmm. So what do you feel like, if you're looking to, say after hearing all these things, someone on our call is like, I think that all sounds amazing, I want to do that. What are your recommendations for identifying those opportunities, and then how do you position yourself to be the right person for that opportunity?
So I think the key step in identifying the opportunities is to work for a company that can provide those types of opportunities. So basically making sure you're working for a multinational company. Mm-hmm. If you're interested in traveling anywhere, even if it's domestic, then certainly just making sure that the company you're working for has satellite offices, or has at least some sort of, additional office outside of the corporate office, because then you know that there could be a potential opportunity.
That opportunity.
So that's definitely the first step. But I think more than saying, okay, I'm gonna look on a job search on LinkedIn or Indeed, or and it's gonna say that there is mobility. There is a mobility option. I think that's much more rare than going into a company, establishing yourself as a competent, trustworthy, accountable employee, and building that relationship, and then having someone say, you know what, you're the right fit for this opportunity, or we're looking for people to potentially, we're trying to build out XYZ here. We really need this type of expertise. Who is interested in going? I think that's a much more fluid way that a lot of companies operate than kind of hiring someone in to specifically do international travel, if that makes sense. So I think really creating a brand for yourself once you're in a company of, thought leadership and competence, and then, raising your hand and telling your boss or, a mentor at your company, this might be something that I would be interested in. Do you know of any opportunities, or do you know what the company is doing, or, just even inquiring with your international colleagues or your remote colleagues, expressing interest in what they're doing, getting more information on that. So that you are invested and people see that you are interested, so that if different opportunities were to be kind of floated around at a management meeting or something like that, your name might get surfaced to the table more regularly. I think it's more, that's a more likely solution or kind of situation than the former of kind of just happening upon one of these opportunities.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, because especially you mentioned one of the things, especially if you are looking for like a moving package, relocation package, any of those benefits that go with moving, the reason a company, as you mentioned, is willing to pay for those things is because they really highly value you in that opportunity. So if you haven't established yourself already at the company, it's hard for them to be willing to go that far out on a limb for somebody that's new to their company. So that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like the long game. You have to at least put yourself in a position where you might have access to those opportunities, like you said, in an international company, but then prove your ability to work independently, be trusted, be making, a lot of progress within your own role within the company to establish yourself in that way. So that makes a lot of sense. And I've had a lot of people actually, a surprising amount, reach out, alums that have reached out to the alumni office asking for resources or advice on how to work internationally. And I think that's what they're hoping, is to just jump right into that opportunity. But it seems like that's more, you have to be a little more strategic than that. And that's more of the long game.
Yeah, I mean, I think if that's kind of your goal is just, I want to work in Ireland, how do I do that? You have to establish some sort of credibility from like what is on your CV or resume, what makes you a valuable candidate to them, and like what from your US experience can you bring to that organization in Ireland. I mean, because I have seen it happen that people are just like, okay, I live in we had an employee who was a French national living in the US and applied for a job in Ireland. And but basically they were just like, here's my skill set. Here's what I can, here's what I've demonstrated and what I've done. And this is why I want to work for you. But generally when you're doing that, you're also working for an international organization abroad. You're going to work in probably some sort of subsidiary or something like that. But there are opportunities, but when people have to sponsor a visa, it costs them money. So they want to make sure that the investment that they're making in your visa, in your relocation, anything like that is going to be worthwhile. And that's a much more likely scenario if you already work for someone and already demonstrated that ahead of time.
Definitely. I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
So we're actually coming to the end of our hour, so this just flew right by. I would love to know, just as our final question, is there anything that we haven't touched on that if someone is really excited about the potential to work internationally or travel like that for work, that they should be thinking about, or that they should be the questions that they should be asking, or either to the employer or maybe even to themselves to know if that's actually something that will make them happy?
So, I mean, personally, I think there are naysayers out there that say, it's not, will you really be happy? You're going to be working far away from family, fear of missing out, like that whole fear of missing out type of thing. And sure, there is a lot of that, but the personal growth that you can get from experiencing different cultures, actually stepping outside your own comfort zone, and like that development leads to so many other opportunities, whether it be professionally, personally, just expanding your overall network and your reach. I wouldn't have the job I have today if I didn't have the international experience I had at Log Me In. So each different opportunity you have can lead to how you approach your career and things like that. So, I mean, I think it's companies look for people with different experiences who can bring different things to the table. And if you do have an international experience, it's something that can set you apart, something that can, help define your brand as a person and what you can bring to the table in a unique way. And so if it's something you're interested in, I mean, personally, I would say absolutely go for it. I mean, you can always use me as a resource. If anyone wants to contact me directly, I'm happy to discuss things offline, off this webinar as well. If there's something specific that we haven't touched on, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, just use resources. Networking is key. So if, don't downplay using your network, using your resources, using UNH's resources, anything like that to try to figure out if you are trying to work abroad, different avenues and ways to go about doing that. So that's probably my last 2 cents.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is tremendously helpful. I think it is such an exciting but overwhelming process that having that insight and, insider experience and feedback is really tremendously helpful. So thank you for all your time today. For those on the call, we did just launch a poll. So if you have a few seconds before you jump off just to answer a couple questions for us, that would be amazing. But otherwise, Kirsten, thank you for everything. You've been an amazing partner through planning this conversation, and I hope you have phenomenal holidays coming up and to stay in touch. So thanks for everything you've done for us.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Jamie. Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye.